Welcome to Outta the Cage, a show that is here to bridge the gap between conventional thinking and comprehensive thinking. Join me, Roy Thompson, as I share with you my health journey from dis-ease to abundant life. Together, we will use that journey as a launch pad to see how hope and freedom are in store for you when you begin to see things differently, rather than what is common, ordinary, and comfortable. Real change can happen. It's time to break out of the cage. Welcome to Outta the Cage, episode 2 of season 1. I'm still so excited to be here with you. I'm your host, Roy Thompson. I just have been looking forward to this for so long, and so many of my friends had heard, oh, you are doing a podcast, and I'd be like, yeah, I am, but I haven't recorded anything. I've gotten everything wrote down. I've got so many shows I want to do and all these things, and so it's been years in the making. I'm just so glad that we're finally getting some stuff recorded. And I'm so thankful for anybody that wants to listen in. I hope that it's beneficial to you. I hope it brings you hope and freedom and really can understand that sometimes seeing things a little bit differently brings a lot of that freedom in your life and that you don't have to be enslaved to the things that we think we do, like the word disease even we talked about in the last episode. If you break it down to dis-ease, it's not easy. It's not something that's fun, but it's something that doesn't have to be a lifelong term that defines your life. And I really hope that that is something that if anybody gets anything out of, can realize there's maybe sometimes more than one way to look at something, maybe more than one way to treat something, and oftentimes food really is medicine. And I think, I'm not saying that everybody can have the same health transformation I have, coming from Crohn's to a liver disease to now being medicine-free and a clean bill of health and having good checkups at the Mayo Clinic and things of that nature. I'm not saying that will happen with everybody, but I think there could be a whole lot more of those stories happening, those success stories and the stories of freedom in your health and in your life. If we could just really get back to the basics and treat things in a functional way and really treat food as medicine. So I want to thank you so much for coming along. I'm excited to be here in the studio, in my new studio. It's an old granary that we took and we rebuilt the south end of it and made it into an exercise area / studio / office / man cave, if you will. And I keep telling my wife, Meredith, you've got to have your friends over. And she's like, yeah, but there's not a bathroom out there. I'm like, well, not yet, but there will be a bathroom out here. But anyway, I'm just so excited to be here with you, and welcome to the show. So last episode, we really dove into kind of where I started, and I won't go through everything again, but an active young guy that just really wanted to, really didn't think anything about health and nutrition. In fact, if you'd have told me when I was 19 or 20 that I would care about nutrition and health like I do now, and that I'd be passionate about it, I probably would have laughed at you. In high school, if there would have ever been a nutrition class, I most likely wouldn't have taken it. I just really, I took one day at a time. I wanted to do the path that was in front of me. I wanted to be active. I wanted to be involved in things. I enjoyed paintballing. I enjoyed learning how to go fight bulls and rodeos and did a little bit of that. And I wish I would have done more of that. Just a brief side note. I wish I would have got into that when I was like a freshman in high school rather than after high school, because I kind of got into it, really enjoyed it, and then learned more about it. And as I did it more and more, I wanted to do it more and more, but then I also had responsibility. I got married right out of tech school. So Meredith and I got married when I was 20, and it was kind of actually at the very beginning of my health journey with Crohn's and PSC as well. And but it was so one of those things I really wish I would have done sooner, but my responsibility had kind of taken off. So if I got hurt, then the income kind of stopped. And, it was just one of those things that I decided it was probably past, and I wish I would have got into it sooner. So anyway, I enjoyed that kind of stuff. I really just took one day at a time and just put one foot in front of the next. And whatever was going on that day, I just focused on that. I didn't think too much about the future. I didn't think too much about my health. I always felt healthy, so I really didn't think much beyond that. And so that's kind of where the journey started. And then I get Crohn's disease, I get liver disease, I start learning about nutrition and health. And really what I kind of titled this episode, or why I titled this episode From Mountain Dew to Bone Broth, because it's my transition. It's honestly learning what it's like to start kind of breaking things down and getting it in a simple form so you can start making those healthy changes and those changes that will have a lasting impact on your health. And I tell everybody anytime I get an opportunity to speak or share on a podcast or a webinar or anything like that, the first thing we changed when we transitioned our health and our kitchen and everything, the first thing we changed was the pop we drank. We didn't cut out pop right away. We literally changed from the normal Mountain Dew that you just go get at the gas station out of the fridge. We changed from the normal one to a throwback one. And that was just going to real sugar. That's all it was. They still had the dyes and the brominated vegetable oil and all the stuff that makes it bad, but they didn't have high fructose corn syrup. So it's like, all right, well, that's the first change. And that really, it always gets a laugh because everybody kind of knows Mountain Dew is probably not the best thing for you to consume on a regular basis. But at the same time, for myself, I didn't throw everything out all at once. It wasn't this overnight change. And so I made that change just to throw back Mountain Dew. But yet it showed me that I could be disciplined to not just grab the normal Mountain Dew and go grab a throwback at the gas station. I don't even know if they still have them. I don't usually buy pop anymore. But and then that got the momentum going. That got the ball rolling. And I just loved that part of the story because as soon as I did that, then I realized, well, I don't actually need pop. How about I go to this Starbucks Frappuccino in the glass jar with fewer ingredients? And yeah, I know it still has 47 grams of carbs in it, but it's still, and it's probably still not great for you, but I was like, okay, well, it's at least better. And from there, I went on to sweetened tea. And then from there, I went on to unsweetened tea. Then I realized, you know what? These gas stations are starting to get kombucha and all these different things in, and some even carry an aloe juice. So I was like, I'm going to go that route. And that's what I've started. That's what I still get if I stop at a gas station is the kombucha or things of that nature. But I wanted to take some time in episode 2 to discuss the transition for us. And that's where it began, was with the pop we drank. And now I don't consume pop on a regular basis. I'll get either maybe a poppy or an ollie pop or a kombucha, things like that are a healthier pop and a gut-friendly pop at least that's what their marketing says, right? But if there's kombucha there, I usually opt for that. Or water kefir from Kavita, stuff like that. But I've been really happy to see more and more gas stations carrying that, and it's kind of fun to stop and get it. Brief side note, the other day I stopped and bought 2 of them. I was really thirsty, and I knew I was going to be on the road a while, so I grabbed that, and I think that's some grass-fed jerky. I grabbed that, put it on the counter, and then I realized, I think they were at, $6 a piece or something, or $5 a piece. And so I got thinking, boy, between my grass-fed jerky and these 2 kombuchas, I could have sat down and had a steak somewhere, but it was still good. But anyway, I opt for that because it was, and I'm so thankful there's some healthier versions out there. And I enjoy, if I am traveling, trying to find the healthiest, most nutrient-dense place to eat. And oftentimes if we're traveling to a bigger town or bigger city or something, finding those farm-to-table restaurants, which, little spoiler alert for you, one of our guests, our first guest, is a restaurant owner down in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And that's the biggest city in South Dakota. And he owns 3 restaurants, and I won't give it away, but he is starting to go all his restaurants farm to table. And it's super fun episode. That'll be coming up shortly. But it's just so good to be able to see local places and restaurants starting to work with ranchers and with farmers as well. So back to our transition. We started with the pop. Now we drink bone broth. We drink bone broth often. So it's Mountain Dew to bone broth is what I titled this one. And I just really think that's powerful because whatever it is that you consume the most of, start there. That's the first thing we tell people is start with the thing you consume the most of, make it the healthiest, and then move on. So that takes us to the second thing we changed, which was our water. We changed to a whole house water filtration system so that the water that our dishes are washed in or the water we shower in, a lot of just tap water, when it steams, it gives off harmful chemicals. But if you can have that filtered, at least mostly filtered when it comes into your home, that really helps. And then we also put a RO, reverse osmosis system under our sink for our drinking water, because at that time, the whole house water filtration system did not take out the fluoride, but the RO system did. So we went with both. We got it from a company called Aquasana. I can put that website in the show notes and see if you can get some good discounts when you're a first-time buyer there. And so we'll put that link in the show notes. But it was a really good water filtration system. I installed it myself. Super easy to do. Come with real simple instructions. My space in our house was really tight, so I had to kind of modify it a little bit, and still worked. We just replaced the big ones. They're big tanks. They stand pretty tall. I just replaced those this last spring because I hadn't done it in, when did I get that? It was probably 8 years old. So I thought it was time to replace the main one. And but we've been super happy with them. We're on their filter program, so they send them out every few months without having to order them, which is super handy as well. So we got a whole house water filtration system, thinking that, well, we consume water mostly out of everything. So why not make that the cleanest, most nutrient dense, at least toxin free water that you can. And then it's got a remineralizer in it as well. And we've been really happy with that. I remember when we first got it, my sister-in-law came over and said, that water is incredible. And then she got the information, and they actually bought one for under their sink now too. And then we moved on to changing the fats that we ate. We limited fried food. We tried to get rid of all our seed oils, and we transitioned with that. That was relatively easy. We went to ghee, that's clarified butter, so it has the casein taken out. We went with raw butter, raw butter, ghee, clarified butter, grass-fed. All this is grass-fed. Olive oil, a good sourced olive oil. And I'll get into that sometime when I talk about olive oil, because I was so frustrated when I found out how much of the olive oil that's sold in stores, it can't even be called 100% pure organic olive oil, but it's still tainted with seed oils. And a lot of times sunflower oil or soy oil. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to make sure you're getting optimal olive oil. And one of those is making sure that if you're buying it, you're rarely going to find true olive oil that is less than $11 a pint. You want to make sure there's a harvest date on that. You want to make sure where it came from. And you want to make sure if you try it that it slightly burns the back of your throat a little bit, kind of has a sting to it. If you put it in the fridge, it should look cloudy when you pull it back out. Those are all some things you can do. Make sure it's in a dark glass bottle so it doesn't oxidize. Just some real good things that you can kind of check when you buy your olive oil to make sure it's the best that it can be. I'll talk more about that in a future episode. So we switched. We got olive oil, ghee, butter. We went to coconut oil, do a lot of coconut oil. Avocado oil we use as well. And we transitioned all our fats, because your cell really does need healthy cholesterol to be pliable, to be able to absorb a lot of the nutrients. And so cholesterol is good. Good, healthy cholesterol is very good for your cells. So we changed the fats that we ate. We changed the proteins. Like I said in last episode, we were farming and ranching, but yet I couldn't eat any of the stuff I was growing. And I just felt a huge disconnect there. And I'll also get into that a little more in the next episode too. But it was a huge disconnect between between the work I was doing and the food I was eating. And it was frustrating to have to order in all the grass-fed, grass-finished beef that we were consuming. But yet that's what we did. We didn't know at that time that we had a better way we could be raising our animals for our own health. And so we were buying in all our grass-fed beef. So we changed that. We went to wild-caught salmon, wild-caught tuna. We went through Vital Choice for that, I believe. I believe U.S. Wellness Meats also sells fresh wild-caught salmon, tuna as well. I was ordering our beef from U.S. Wellness Meats. I was just having it shipped up, and I'd try to get it in bulk when I could. And then we'd also go to Vital Choice for our wild seafood, and they had incredible products up there, everything flash frozen. I didn't enjoy eating fish or salmon or anything when we start transitioning our diet and our lifestyle. But when I started tasting Vital Choice's products up there, they're flash frozen. So within 2 hours of being caught, they're froze. And I realized that if fish tastes fishy, then it's already been oxidized, and fish should not taste fishy. When I realized that, that was just a game changer for me. We love making salmon fillets on the grill. Oftentimes we'll kind of baste it in lemon juice or apple cider vinegar, something like that, so that if it's on the grill, it doesn't oxidize there either. Kind of that acid kind of helps keep things intact. And I don't know all the proper terms for it. I just know it's good to do. So we do that. We really enjoy salmon. I also have some cousins that fish in the Pacific, and they send some salmon every now and then as well. And just incredible. Wild caught, fresh caught is the way to go. We also went to pastured chicken, and I never had a lot of pork. Well, that was one thing that I had to stay away from when I had Crohn's, was just no pork whatsoever. I remember I went to a wedding shortly after I got sick, and I had a pork loin sandwich, and I was sick for 2 weeks. And so I realized pork can tend to be the hardest protein to digest, at least it was for me. And so I just stayed away. I just X'd it out. That's not what I was going to do, and not have be a part of my life, because I knew for sure. And when I talk about when I was pulled down by PSC, I could tell my liver condition. I could tell everything that really wreaked havoc in my system. And one of those was pork. And so for a decade, I went off pork. And not until, about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I think I tried some pastured pork, and it was amazing. I never got sick. And, it was actually when we went to pick up India. So my oldest daughter, all our kids were adopted. That's probably a story for another time. My wife and I weren't able to have children biologically. And so we went through adoption to grow our family. We felt that's what God had truly brought into our life and led us to, and wouldn't change it for the world. We're so thankful for them. But when we went down to pick up India, I remember the host down there, our social workers had us over for breakfast the morning before she was born. And we went in there, and all it was were these egg-baked casseroles, all with tons of sausage in them, pork sausage. And I was like, oh, Lord, I have not eaten pork in would have been at that time 6 years. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if I can do this. And yet it was one of those times you're just, you pray for the food, you ask the Lord to bless it and allow your body to digest it, and surrendered it. It was one of those things that orthorexia I wasn't going to let get the best of me. I know that's a real thing, by the way, to where you don't want any impure food in your mouth. You don't want to, you can get so focused on health, and that's not freedom either. It's eating clean, eating healthy is wonderful, but it's not freedom if it's something that controls you. Now, if you're in the middle of a detox or healing from something, that's different. But yet, at the same time, I felt like, you know what, I'm meant to eat this, and I just thank the Lord for it. I ate it, and I had no problems whatsoever digesting it. It was a growing time for me because I was all nervous about it. That was back when I would ask the restaurant if beef in the burger was grass-fed or not. And my wife would slowly put her head down and just shake her head and be embarrassed. And I only did that a few times, but it was embarrassing for her. So, so we changed up our proteins. Like I say, I'm getting through this. I promise there's a point. But we changed up our proteins. And when I did add pork back in a few years ago, I made sure it was pasture raised. And I got it from nourishedbynature.us. They have great products there. And it is really, really good pastured pork. So it is something that I don't eat it a lot, but I will have some pastured pork here and there. And then we kind of went on to, we want it wild caught. We want it, pasture raised, whether it's wild caught seafood or pasture raised chicken or beef or pork or whatever. We want that. And then there's the organic label. So I started buying organic veggies and trying to make sure that whatever it is that we are consuming had the least amount of toxins, the highest amount of nutrient value. And that's, as I learned a little more about regenerative agriculture, that's when I realized that nutrient density in our foods can really be improved by soil health. And I'm very passionate about that too. So, so much stuff to say. It's tough to get it all jammed into one episode. So we're going to have plenty of episodes where I'll discuss all of this in a little better detail. And so those were the first things we changed in our lifestyle. And some of those things were really easy to change, and some took us a while. You know, we started buying ghee, and that had a little different consistency. And Meredith learned to cook with the different oils and how we didn't want to overheat the olive oil. In fact, we started using that more just for dressing and also for putting on pretty much anything. Especially when I was doing the secret detox, in my meals, I would make sure it was doused in healthy fat. And saturated fat is processed by the liver, and it's much easier burned. It's quickly burned as energy, especially like medium chain fat, like coconut oil is readily burned as energy. Your body doesn't have to do much to store it and then go back in and store it as fat and then pull it back out to be used as energy. So we're huge fans of coconut oil, huge fan of olive oil in certain things. And we even sometimes will just take a little shot of it in the morning to kind of start the day with every now and then. It's the stuff we started getting. They switched companies, so I'll put that link in there as well. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it is very fresh, very good olive oil, and we've been very happy with that. So those are the things we changed initially, and it just starts with one. It starts with the one thing to get that flywheel spinning, and as we continued down that transition, it really started having an effect on the work we did every day. And that was something that I just really blew my mind was how we could start changing not just our livelihood for what we're eating, but how that started working its way into the work we did, like with ranching and with farming. And I really, really did begin losing a lot of desire for the work I was doing, like I said earlier, because I was just kind of going through the motions. You know, I was farming conventionally, so I was spraying and fertilizing. We were implanting all our cattle. We were using Poron. We were to get the insects, you know, the lice, and take care of everything like that in the fall. And it was something that I just didn't think of it. I didn't know any different at the time. So things started changing when I realized that, well, our beef that we're going to consume, I don't want to have our hormones. I don't want to have Poron on them because that Poron is actually stored in the fat. That it's an insecticide that is poured on to help the animal fight off some of the insects they'll come in contact with, lice being one of them, and certain worms and things like that. So that is the reason people do it, and I totally understand that. I'm not bashing them for that. But for the beef we were going to be consuming, I wanted to make sure ours didn't have any of that, and to make sure it's pasture-raised and 100% grass-fed and grass-finished, because just like with any label, if people have the label, it's easy to try to look at the loopholes and see what you can get by with, to still be classified as grass-fed, but maybe not be grass-finished. And maybe it was finished on corn, but it was grass-fed most of its life. So if you get 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef, that means it was fed grass the whole time through. And so that's what we began doing with more of our herd, and it just kind of grew from there. And something we decided to start selling to the public and shipping. All of that took a whole new turn, stuff I didn't really expect as far as perishable shipping, and so many more things that were involved in a business of selling grass-fed beef than what I didn't realize when I first started going down that path. So that's what it kind of looked like to start transitioning our livelihood. Nowadays, a normal day, you know, we raise our own eggs, so we have our own chickens. We raise our own pastured free-range chickens and consume the eggs in the morning, so I'll oftentimes have a lot of eggs in the morning. Usually I'll have something like either, you know, there's some chicken sausage we get from, I think it's Applegate, but different companies make it pasture-raised, apple sausage, chicken apple sausage that goes good with those eggs. And so a typical day would be eggs and sausage in the morning, and maybe a smoothie. I'll have a lot of smoothies. Every now and then we'll throw some spinach in there, berries, full-fat coconut milk, 2 or 3 scoops of Dr. Axe Ancient Nutrition bone broth, A lot of times it's vanilla flavored. Then we throw in stuff like acai powder or pomegranate powder and just blend that all up. Maybe throw a little bit of organic peanut butter in. I don't do that as much as I used to, but because we don't use as much nut butters as we did at one time. But now that's something that the kids love. We enjoy it. And I think we kind of burned the kids out a little bit because they had it a lot growing up. And I still enjoy a good breakfast smoothie. But so then that's kind of breakfast. Dinner time, Meredith does a lot of sourdough bread. She'll do sourdough with like kamut flour a lot of times, or she'll just do a normal organic wheat flour, but a lot of times it's kamut and true sourdough and all homemade. It's amazing. But I don't do a lot of bread. I don't do a ton of grains, but when I do, it's usually either sprouted or sourdough. And we get the local grocery store in town. They carry Ezekiel bread as well, so you can get that sprouted grain bread in there. But oftentimes we'll opt for, Meredith will just make the sourdough bread, and that is probably what I prefer if we're going to go that route. But for dinner, oftentimes, I mean, it can be a wide array of anything, but it's just pastured proteins, pastured fats, pastured proteins, healthy fats. We go with full fat pretty much everything, whether it's coconut milk or milk if we can find a good raw milk provider. We do have a couple dairy cows. At the moment, we're not milking anything. They're with their calves out in the pasture, and it just kind of feel a little bit too spread thin at the moment to really focus on milking them very often. But in the wintertime, Meredith will milk them, Meredith and the kids. I don't have the hands for milking a cow. My fingers are a little bit small, and it took me like 45 minutes to get a quart one day, and I was like, I love this, but this is way too much time. So I bought a milker actually, and I was going to hook that up, but we needed a bigger compressor, and then Meredith was telling me how it's so tough. She came from a dairy, and so she knows all about it. She said it's tough to get the milkers really clean, and if you're only doing one cow, it's probably not worth it. So she just preferred doing it by hand to keep the milk cleaner and not have to clean up all the equipment when you're done. And that takes so long for me to do. So bless her heart when she does it. I very much love it. But we also, when I was going through the secret detox, we did not have a milk cow. And so we just found somewhat local. She's about 45 miles away, 50 miles away, that she did do raw dairy. And so I know it's quote unquote illegal in certain states. And so if you see it at a farmer's market and it's pet food, it's raw dairy. You can oftentimes consume it. So it's, we found a local producer. We went to her. We got our butter, raw cheese, let's see what else, yogurt, kefir, raw milk, and it was A2 as well. For that, you just send in some hair samples off the back of the cow, I think 20 hairs, and they run a test on it. They tell you if it's A2 protein. I mentioned in the first episode, but the A1 protein is often the protein that will slip through leaky gut first, the A1 casein protein, and then the gluten protein as well. When your intestinal lining stretches, I describe it kind of like a bug net. If you pull a bug net apart, those little holes get bigger and more stuff can slide through. That's exactly what the intestinal lining is like in your gut. And if through toxins or medication or whatever it is, as that stretches, some of those proteins, mainly grains, proteins from grains or dairy, can tend to slip through. So the A2 protein, I believe, is a larger protein, and people don't seem to have the problem as they would with an A1 milk. So by and large, most all the milk you get at the store is A1, unless you can actually buy that brand of milk that is, I think the brand is A2. And so if you can get that, great. But most importantly, if you can get it low heat processed, low heat pasteurized, or raw would be the best. Or if you can find a local source for that dairy, that'd be perfect. And that's one thing I really tell people is in this transition, whether you're in a city, whether you're in a rural area, urban area, wherever you're at, if you can get connected to your food source a little better, that is huge. If you can go and build that relationship with your farmer, with your rancher, and you trust them, I honestly believe that is more important than following any label. So I'll sell you grass-fed protein, and I would love to sell you that. But you know what? I would prefer you to go to your local person, your local rancher, your local farmer, and build that relationship. I think that would be the best thing, because there's that community aspect. There is the aspect of seeing where your food is coming from, what your food is eating. So whether you're buying beef or pork or chicken, go and see how they're raised. You know, the label that says cage-free, you'd be appalled if you could see some of the pictures of cage-free chickens. I should have done my homework and pulled up what it's like to follow those, to be able to sell pastured or cage-free chickens, because they're not really cage-free. They maybe have like a foot more to walk around than the caged chickens. But if you can go and meet your farmer and your rancher, I think that's huge. And then when you see that, maybe the rancher will say, okay, ours technically couldn't be labeled grass finished because in the wintertime we give some organic corn, or maybe in the wintertime we give a little bit of barley or whatever that is, whatever the grain might be. Or, you know what, technically I fed an oats bale last winter and that had some oats in it. And, that's not going to knock off the omega-3, 6, and 9 fatty acid ratios. It just simply, I had to give it some feed for some of that oats for maybe a little more energy than what they were getting on the prairie hay because the winter was tough or something like that. I think that is much more important for you to build that relationship. And most people, I think, if their rancher said that, they'd be like, oh, that's totally fine. Giving it some organic oats in the hay when it's still on the stem, that's perfect. You know what? That makes sense. And so I think there's a lot of trust that can be built when you go and see where your food is coming from. And then the farmer, the money you give the farmer is going straight to the farmer. It's not going through all these other companies in order to get back to the farmer. The average a farmer or rancher will gain on their food dollar. So you go and you spend $1 at the store for proteins, veggies, whatever it is. The average, I believe, is 14% of that dollar goes to the farmer. Now, when you build that relationship with your local producer, all of a sudden, not only you know where your food's coming from, you know what the conditions your food was grown in, whether it was veggies or proteins, whatever. You know what it's fed, you know the conditions and everything, but all of a sudden you give that money to the farmer, and other than a few costs in their inputs, they can now capture over 80% of that food dollar. And I think that just helps out the community all the more. You buy local, they provide locally, and I get really excited about that because people that don't have the benefit of being able to grow their own food can build relationships with those who can. And then, you know what, if you can find a small producer that maybe you could say, hey, you know what, I want to buy from you every year. Could you raise my food this way? And I promise you I'll buy, X amount of beef or X amount of veggies or whatever. I think that is huge because I guarantee they're going to want to do whatever they can to make you happy as well. And so in transitioning, if you are saying, okay, well, that's great, but I can't afford the costly grass-fed beef that is shipped to me because shipping can get so expensive. It blew my mind when we started shipping perishables that it really, really can add up quickly. It's not uncommon to have a little box, 18 by 12 by 12, that weighs 38 pounds. By the time you buy the cooler, the box, pay for the shipping, and get it to where it needs to go as far as to deliver it to the UPS store. And by the time it's done, you can easily have, and you put some dry ice in there, you can easily have $50 or $60, sometimes more, into shipping. And that's having an account at UPS. And now I have a new integration with our website where it is a little cheaper now, but it can really add up quickly. So honestly, if that's you and you're like, yeah, I can't do that. I can't get all the top of the line food shipped to me. That's just too expensive. Then again, I would say go find a local producer. It might not be perfect. It may not be raised the exact way you want it, but just growing to know where your food comes from and seeing how it was raised is going to really give you a good start in transitioning to a healthier lifestyle. And it's so cool because to me, as I started learning more about nutrition and as I started transitioning, in my health and in our diet and everything, I realized that, and Jordan Rubin said it too, that all digestion begins in the mouth. And it begins actually even before you put food in your mouth. And that comes to working with your food. So just take, for instance, you go to your local producer and you get the food, you get the produce, and you say you get the meat, and you come home and you start cleaning it up and you start preparing it for your meal. As you're creating it, your mind and your saliva, your digestive enzymes begin flowing. And all of a sudden, you're working with your food. Your hands are on it. By the time you eat that food that you went and got and you prepared and you're getting ready to partake of, all of a sudden the digestion has already started. So as soon as you put that food in your mouth, it's coated in digestive enzymes. And when your mouth starts watering, when something smells good and looks good and you're excited to eat it, that is a great sign, because that is your saliva preparing for digestion. I think that's so incredible. And so my wife always just closes her eyes, shakes her head when I tell this story. But I was learning a lot about nutrition. I hadn't gone through the detox yet. I had started realizing that it really is important to begin digestion by enjoying, looking at your food, the smell of your food, and looking forward to consuming that food. So my mouth was watering. I mean, the digestive enzymes were flowing. And we were in Australia for a wedding. And I had recently been I had just gotten introduced to passion fruit. And oh man, it was amazing. It was tart. It was fresh. It was so good. My mouth is watering just thinking about it. And so it was after the wedding. It was the next morning. There's a long table of people, and we were visiting with, I would say there was probably about 12 or 15 people there. And I'm at the end of the table, and I'm sitting there with a half of a passion fruit, digging that thing out. And as I'm digging it out, my mouth starts watering. I mean, the salivary glands were just pumping. And I was visiting. Everybody was looking at me because I was talking. I was telling a story. And as I'm digging that out, my mouth was kind of at the side. As I'm talking, all of a sudden, this drool comes out of the corner of my mouth and lands right on the table. And just, I said, whoop. And I wiped it off my chin. And my wife was like, oh, Roy. And she just shook her head. And the whole table just roared with laughter. I was like, oh, man, pardon me. I'm so excited about this passion fruit. I couldn't hardly hold my saliva in. And they laughed. They knew how much I loved food. And so a very kind, sweet lady there, Julia was her name, said, oh, it's okay, Roy. It happens to the best of us. I'm like, oh, really? Who else on this table has really drooled while they're telling a story? And so it was embarrassing, but I'm a firm believer. It's only awkward if you make it awkward. And so I didn't want to make it awkward. We just kept on rolling. So to this day, that was 9 years ago now. To this day, I'll say, oh man, my mouth is almost ready to dribble. And Jim will text back and he'll say, nothing beats a good dribble, mate. And it's just, I love it. It's so good. But it's just an example of when you enjoy your food, when you look forward to eating your food, you're really going to have a better digestion. Your body's going to metabolize it better. Your body's going to be at a calmer state when you're eating it. And in our day and age, it's so easy to run through the drive-thru and grab a meal that you didn't prepare, and you pull it out of the bag, and that's the first time you smell it. And it might smell okay, but it's lack of nutrients. You scarf it down while you're driving. Your brain's not even thinking about eating. You're just shoving it down your throat. And then all of a sudden, you're oftentimes probably stressed while you're going, because if you're grabbing a quick meal, you're probably going somewhere else. And we're just pulled in so many directions. We kind of have lost that art of sitting down and having a meal. And I think, not to mention the benefit of having a meal with your family or friends, and how important that social interaction is as well for your health and your well-being. And so I just really want to encourage you, if you're transitioning in your health, or you need to, kind of get back to the basics. We've talked about make the thing you consume the most healthy, toxin-free, nutrient-dense, and start there. And then just get that ball rolling. If you can't get a good quality product, go meet a local farmer or rancher that is desiring to sell direct and see if you can build a relationship and see if you maybe talk to them about, if I buy this and I give you this much now, would you, raise it this way for me? And, just build that relationship. And you can start by just getting fresh food. Even if it's not raised perfectly, at least that's a good start. And that really is something that was a huge part for me, is getting back to understanding where your food comes from, what it's like preparing it, and just making homemade food again. Not that we weren't before, it's just it took on a new meaning. And it's okay. Hey, believe me, take it from me. If you start realizing that it's so important to have food that smells good, tastes good, there's so many people that think, oh, well, you know what? I'd love to eat healthier, but I don't want to have a kale salad every meal. It's like, no, there's more healthy things to eat than just the kale salad. Or they're like, you know what? I just don't want to eat grass clippings my whole life. You don't have to have salad at every meal. But it's funny because there's such joy and fun in taking part in having good food. Everybody wants good food. You don't want to just eat bland, tasteless, nutrientless food. And when your body starts having nutrient-dense food, it really starts craving it. And that's it. I just love that, because there came a point during the secret detox, I'd pull in at night knowing that supper was ready. And this was all new to me, so it was all new experience. When I would pull in the yard, I didn't even walk in the house yet, my mouth would start watering because it knew I was going to have a great meal. And so healthy food doesn't have to be boring. Healthy food doesn't have to be expensive. And if you can pay the rancher, the farmer directly, all of a sudden you're going to get a better deal than what you get at the store, because there's so many less people involved. And if you can even go pick it up and build that relationship, another spoiler alert, the guest I'm going to have here in a couple shows here, he is really going to hit it out of the park when we talk about this, because he's doing this with 3 of his restaurants, and just super excited for you to hear that episode. And so Mountain Dew to bone broth, to summarize. Now, if we don't have homemade bone broth, I get Ancient Nutrition's bone broth protein powder. I either get chocolate or vanilla. It's incredible. We also get the chicken soup one that's flavored for putting in chicken soup or any kind of soup. But oftentimes in the wintertime especially, Meredith makes a lot of homemade bone broth. And you can buy homemade bone broth. We don't offer it yet on our website, but you can order it from nourishedbynature.us. You can order it from uswellnessmeats.com. You can order it from Vital Choice. All these places, that is the first thing I tell people that they can add into almost any health concern that they have, is start on bone broth. Start a bone broth fast. You know what? Have it first thing in the morning. Have it again mid-morning. And Meredith had her wisdom teeth taken out a couple years ago, and she did a 3-day bone broth fast. And I tell you what, she felt amazing. She felt like her skin cleared up, and she didn't even have bad skin to begin with, but she felt her skin got better. She felt like her incisions in her mouth healed so fast. And it's just such a great thing to implement in your life. And it doesn't have to taste like you're having just, a cup of water that was poured over bones. It's like steak in a cup, and it's incredible. So it's probably one of the most nutrient-dense things you can do. And I do very similar things as US Wellness Meats. They're a way larger scale. Nourishedbynature.us. They're great people and kind of a mentor of mine as well. They do wonderful things. I go to their website. You know what? Like I said, we do similar things in our website, but I'm on small scale at this point, and they're doing it much bigger. I would be happy if you could go there and get some healthy bone broth, healthy pork, healthy proteins, healthy beef, and just give them a try. And that is kind of what I want to leave you with for today. Those are some of the things we transitioned with, but I really want to encourage you, start with one thing and build from there. You'll see how easy it is to make that transition to a healthy thing. If it's a candy bar that you have every day, try to make a homemade version of it and make it better. Make it with real ingredients, whole food. Try to make it organic, as toxin-free as possible. And there's so many incredible recipes out there. I know you can do it. You'll enjoy the process. And I just hope you really have fun doing it. So until next time, thank you so much for listening. Well, that wraps up another episode of Outta the Cage. Thanks for sticking around. I hope this episode has opened your eyes to the world of possibilities that are in store for you when you begin seeing things differently. If you enjoyed what you heard today, would you mind running over to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe, and also rate us so that we can impact more people? If you think of someone that could benefit from listening to this episode, please share it with them. You can also check out the website at outofthecagepodcast.com. There you will see all of our episodes as well as sign up for my newsletter. I'm looking forward to next time. Until then, stay curious and keep pressing ahead.